Hello, hello. My name's Sammy, aka Forstring Boy, and today is Fingerstyle First-day number 6. We're talking about my brand new series, Fingerstyle First-days. It's a collection of 10 fingerstyle pieces, completely original, written by me, and they're going to go in difficulty order. So today is piece number 6. If you've just randomly encountered this, hello internet, then please feel free to go have a look at the previous ones. Like I said, we are building up in difficulty. In today's piece, we're ramping up the speed a little bit. We have some constant ukulele arpeggios going on and a little bit of testing movements going up and down the neck. So let's get ready. As always, obviously, I'll teach you how to play the whole thing note for note. But if you would prefer a little sheet or a PDF to look at, then you can purchase my book, Fingerstyle First-days, from my website. It has all 10 pieces scored and tabbed out, and you also get 3 MP3s of each track, basically one track tempo and then 2 slowed down, because it's good to listen to what you're learning. Now, the playthrough at the start obviously has some backing and stuff that I put in it, but if you just want to listen to the ukulele playthrough alone, you can skip to the chapter at the very end of the video, and you can hear the whole thing just without any of the backing. So all you need is a high G tuned ukulele. Once it's tuned, let's go. Okay, so a couple of things about this piece. It's in 3/4 time signature. So that means we're spending most of the time counting 1 and 2 and 3 and, or simply just on the quarter notes 1, 2, 3. But for most of it, it is spent counting the eighth notes 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now, this piece is primarily made of what I'd call a ukulele arpeggio. And if you're not familiar with the word arpeggio, it's just a fancy music word. And it means instead of when we play a chord, we obviously play all the notes at once. That's what makes it a chord. Arpeggio translates to broken chord. So it just means that you play a chord, but you play it one note at a time. So on a high G ukulele, if we were to go from the lowest notes to the highest notes, that means that we have to pluck the C string. I'm going to do that with my thumb, then the E string with my index finger, then the G string with your thumb, and then the A string, and I'm going to use my middle finger for that. So we go C, E, G, A, and I'm going thumb, index, thumb, and then middle. And that's our standard ukulele arpeggio. Like I said, on a high G ukulele, we go from the lowest note to highest note, and it is in that order. It's quite a nice one because it always goes kind of like thumb, finger, thumb, finger. So you're never using the same digit twice in a row. So it's a nice one to build up speed. Now, it's a pattern of 4, 1 and 2 and, 1 and 2 and. So we're in 3, so we have 1 and 2 and 3 and, which means we have 6 8 notes altogether. So actually, pretty much every single pattern is going to be a ukulele arpeggio, which is C, E, G, A, which would be 1 and 2 and then I've got 2 notes remaining. So all we're going to do is kind of come back on ourselves, and we're going to play the G again, followed by the E string. So the arpeggio in total goes C, E, G, A, G, E. And again, C, E, G, A, G, E. 3, 2, 4, 1, 4, 2. So you might want to spend just a bit of time just getting used to playing that arpeggio, because in this piece, it happens a real lot of times. So this piece is going to push the tempo a little bit. We're at 140 BPM, okay? So that's quite fast. But what I've done is I've decided to use these arpeggios to get us used to a bit of speed, because like I said, we're never using the same finger twice in a row when we're playing these 8th notes. So it's a nice exercise to get used to faster speeds. Okay, so moving on to bar 1, we need a good old F chord, please. And we're literally going to play that arpeggio that I just talked about. So we play C, E, G, A, G, E. And again, on the right hand, I'm playing my thumb, index, thumb, middle, thumb, index. But if you have your own preferred version of fingerstyle that you want to play, you can absolutely do that. So that means bar 1, we go 1 and 2 and 3 and then actually bars 2 and 3 are going to be exactly the same. So bar 2, do the same thing, please. 1 and 2 and 3 and then bar 3, exactly the same. C, E, G, A, G, E. So we should essentially just end up with the pattern 3 times around. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So So remember, we're in the time signature 3/4, so we're only counting up to 3 and, no 4s again. So when we come to bar 4, we're actually just going to play 3 quarter notes. So we just play on the 1, 2, 3. And we're just going to play some single notes. So I want you to pluck your C string for me, which is nice and open. Then, using your middle finger, I want you to fret the 2nd fret C string and pluck that for me, which is a D note. And you can actually leave that finger on there so it bleeds into the next note if you want. So after that, I just want you to pluck an open E string. And again, I'm going to use my index finger for that. So that means we pluck open C, 2nd fret C, and then an open E. So timing-wise, I'm going 1, 2, 3. But again, because everything else has counted 8 notes, really I'm going 1 and 2 and 3 and. We're only playing on the numbers for that bar. So that means line 1 will sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now for bar 5, we actually have a very similar setup. So instead of an F major, I want you to play an A minor. And I recommend using your middle finger for this A minor. If you're used to playing an A minor with your index finger, absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for this piece, where we're going between F, A minor, and then where we're going up with some other chords, I do recommend that you use your middle finger for that A minor. So that's just middle finger, 2nd fret, G string. So for bar 5, we're going to play the same arpeggio, C, E, G, A, G, E. And then bar 6 and 7 are going to be exactly the same. So bar 6, we play the same thing, C, E, G, A, G, E. And then bar 7, the exact same, C, E, G, A, G, E. And we're going to finish this line again with a similar phrase. So we're just going to be plucking single notes on the quarters again. So pluck your open C string, then go back to plucking your 2nd fret C string with your middle finger. And then we're going to go, actually this time, back to the open C string. So again, I'd be counting that as 1, 2, 3, or 1 and 2 and 3 and. So the whole of line 2 should actually feel very, very, very similar to line 1, but it'll sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, so next we hit bar 9. Bar 9 and 10 are going to be the same thing. We'll go back to our F chord. And we're going to play our same arpeggio. So F chord, C, E, G, A, G, E. And then bar 10 is going to be exactly the same. C, E, G, A, G, E. Now for bar 11, we're going to play a C major 7 chord. But there's a real fun, cheeky way that you can play this on a high G ukulele. And that's actually, you just take your F chord, and then you just move it up 2 frets. And again, technically this is a more complicated name, but you can just substitute it for any C major 7. It's just a gorgeous sounding chord, especially when we come from an F, because you can just slide it up 2 frets. And we have that lovely voicing. So for bar 11, that means we're going to play, we're up here, 4, 0, 3, 0. And we're going to play our same arpeggio, C, E, G, A, G, E. And for bar 12, I'm going to play the exact same thing, C, E, G, A, G, E. So for line 3, it's just all arpeggios, essentially. We start off with F, and then we move up 2 frets to our C major 7. So line 3 will sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now for line 4, bar 13, we need to start with an A minor chord. Now remember when I said earlier about using your middle finger for the A minor? Well, your middle finger's not really going to leave the G string for this entire piece, okay? So we're trying to keep this on. So from here, I would just almost move back down to my F chord and then just release my index finger. And hey, I have an A minor. So for bar 13, I'm going to play my same arpeggio, C, E, G, A, G, E. And then bar 14, I'm going to repeat the same thing. Still my A minor, C, E, G, A, G, E. Okay, so for bar 15, we're going to do something completely wild, and we're going to go flying up the fretboard. So we're going to play G6 chord, but the way I'm voicing this is take your middle finger and transport it all the way up to the 7th fret on the G string. And then take your ring finger and play the 7th fret on the C string. So you should have 7 on G and then 7 on C. And we want to leave the E and A strings open. So it's a good jump from our previous A minor. But again, we're using our middle finger to kind of help us transport it. So the difference between that A minor and that G6 really is just a ring finger. So just spend some time again, just strumming between the two chords. And just make sure that you're comfortable moving up and changing to that new chord. So bar 15, we've got our G6 chord, and we're going to play the same arpeggio. C, E, G, A, G, E. And then for bar 16, actually all we're going to do is pluck the C string and let it sit there for the whole bar. So technically I have to pluck my C and go 1 and 2 and 3 and it sounds really silly, but it's really important to kind of let that bar count out, okay? Often in music, what I find with students is that when we have big spaces and stuff like that, it becomes rushed because we're kind of like, well, I'm bored now, there's no music, so I'll just move back on. But the silence is equally as important as basically the noise. That's it. What you don't play is just as important as what you do play. So please just make sure, even if you're counting in your head, you make sure that that lasts for the entire bar. So for line 4, let's go back to our A minor. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, so good news. At the moment in these pieces, they start getting longer, okay? So I'm starting to try to introduce you to playing longer pieces. We start off with very short ones because it's easy to remember, but often when we do look at music and covers and stuff like that, they do go on for like 3 or 4 minutes. So just slowly getting yourself into learning to play longer and trying to concentrate and remember what's going on is really important. So for a lot of these lines, you're actually just going to be playing what you've already played, okay? So there's not much teaching here. I'm just going to be telling you to repeat the same things, but it's still important that you do it. And like I said, it's just so it's training our brain to have all this song in there and we don't kind of sweat and cry when we're trying to sit there performing it and remembering it. It is very stressful, especially if you're performing live or, for example, if you're recording yourself or something like that, you'll find that your brain panics and you overthink things. So kind of practicing and getting used to playing longer pieces, I think is really good for us. So basically, line 5 is going to be the same as line 1, which was we started at an F chord, and that's for bar 17. And so essentially line 5, same as line 1, it will sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. And then we move on to line 6, which is the same as line 2. So line 6 will sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Right, next we hit bar 25, line 7, same as line 3. So that was our F chord to our C major 7 chord. So just as a reminder, line 3 and line 7 both sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, so for line 8, bar 29, this is where things do start to change, okay? So our right hand pattern again isn't going to change, and that's on purpose. I just want us to get used to one kind of continuous pattern and learn to not break that whilst our left hand does other things. So we were just on our C major 7. I want us to play an A minor chord, but maybe not an A minor chord you've played before, and that's essentially just moving up to the 5th fret of the G string with my middle finger, and there you go. A minor. Often you'll find there are many voicings to chords that you always play that are actually no harder to play than the original chord, because that's our A minor, but that's also an A minor. So again, just if you want, steal this A minor and start putting it into your own repertoire whenever you need an A minor chord. There is no theoretical difference between the two chords, so that is still an A minor. Please steal it. Okay, so with my A minor 5th fret G string in position, I'm going to play my arpeggio, C, E, G, A, G, E. And then for bar 30, I'm going to play the same thing again, C, E, G, A, G, E. And then we're going to play a new chord, an E sus4. So again, it's middle finger led. So just move your middle finger down 1 fret to the 4th fret on the G string. And we're going to drop our ring finger on the 4th fret on the C string. You'll notice that this is exactly the same G6 chord that we played earlier. Just on the 4th fret, it makes an E sus4. So once it's in position for bar 31, we're going to play the same arpeggio. C, E, G, A, G, E. And then for bar 32, I'm going to play the exact same thing again. C, E, G, A, G, E. So that means line 8 will sound like this, starting on the A minor on the 5th fret. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... Moving on to bar 9, you're going to recognize this. So we go back to our F, and then we're going to move up to our C major 7. Yes, we've met this line before. So start with your F chord and play your arpeggio. C, E, G, A, G, E. For the next bar, bar 34, play exactly the same. C, E, G, A, G, E. Bar 35, move up 2 frets to our C major 7. Again, just an F shape, but moved up 2 frets. And we're going to play the same thing. C, E, G, A, G, E. And then 36 again. C, E, G, A, G, E. So yes, line 9, exactly the same as line 3. And line 6. So line 9 will sound like this. Back to your F chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, line 10. Whoa, we're still going. It's a long one. Okay, so I'm here with my C major 7. We need to move up to an A5 chord. Now, usually we'd call that an A power chord, but written down it will say A5. So this chord is basically middle finger all the way up to the 9th fret of the G string, and then drop your ring finger onto the 9th fret C string. Again, same exact chord shape for the G6 and the E sus4. Same shape. These are wonderful movable shape. So I've got 9, 9 on the G and C, and then open, open on the E and A. And for bar 37, we're going to play our arpeggio. C, E, G, A, G, E. And then for bar 38, we're going to play the same thing. C, E, G, A, G, E. For bar 39, we're going to go back to our G6 chord. So actually, it's already here, but just moved down 2 frets. So I should have 7, 7, open, open. Continue to use the same fingers. Don't try and change fingers. Just take that middle finger and ring finger and just move them down 2 frets. We play our arpeggio. C, E, G, A, G, E. And then for bar 40, we're actually going to move all the way down to the 4th fret, back to our E sus4. Again, same chord shape. So we just kind of take that chord shape and just move it down to the 4th fret. C, E, G, A, G, E. Okay, so for line 10, it's an interesting one, right? Because we're not changing chord shape, but we have to kind of move up and down the fretboard quite quickly between the chord changes. So yes, again, sorry, teacher, I just want to test you out for things like this, seeing that can we take the same chord shape and just move it quickly up and down the fretboard without it kind of breaking our hand position. Anyway, line 10 should sound like this. We start with our A5, 9, 9, 0, 0. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... Line 11, we come back to a good old favorite. We're going to play F and then C major 7. So line 11, same as 3, 6 and 9. So start with the F chord. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... And then we hit the final line, line 12. Whoa, okay, well done, well done. We got there, we got there. So we've technically played this chord change as well before, but we're just going to end it here. So from bar 45, we essentially, from our C major 7, just move up 1 fret with your middle finger on the G string. So you should have 5, 0, 0, 0. If you remember, that's an A minor chord. In bars 45 and 46, we're just going to play this arpeggio. C, E, G, A, G, E, C, E, G, A, G, E. Then for bar 47, I'm going to move down 1 fret and then add my ring finger to the 4th fret C string. So I should have 4, 4, 0, 0, which was E sus 4. So I'm going to start off with just a normal arpeggio again, C, E, G, A, G, E. And for the final bar of 48, we're just going to simply pluck that last note. And really then you can let that hold for as long as you want because the piece doesn't go anywhere. So that's absolutely fine if you just want to play it and run off and buy some ice cream. That's totally cool. But if you want to play it and let it sustain as long as you possibly can, that's also fine. Okay, so the final line, line 12, should sound like this. We start with that A minor, middle finger, 5th fret, G string. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. And there we go. So just as a reminder, if you do want to listen to the piece, the whole piece without the backing track, if you find the backing track distracting, it is literally at the end of this video. So you can go skip and go along and listen to that. And remember, YouTube is cool as well. It has some slowdown features. So just go into the settings, change your playback speed, and you can slow it down. Just so if you want to play along with me, that you can do that if you want to. Right, I know you've just listened to me talk for a very long time, but actually I want a little bit of theory babble right now so we can talk about how to speed train this piece on the ukulele. So I very much designed this piece. Like I said, it's a good tempo. It's 140 BPM. And that's quite a daunting tempo to play the whole thing to if you're really not used to playing fingerstyle. So going straight into that tempo is always a terrible, terrible idea. We need to play it much slower. But actually, we can kind of learn it slower, and then we can say, okay, now I can try and play it a bit faster. But often when we say to ourselves, I'll play it a bit faster, that kind of ends up usually maybe 20, 30, maybe even 40 BPM faster. And what happens is it's too fast for your hands. And so everything falls apart, you get very annoyed, you sell your ukuleles, and you move into a caravan in the countryside. So there is actually a tool that we can help us speed train on the ukulele. And this is not just the ukulele, it's any instrument at all. But it's really helpful for this exercise when we're playing our arpeggios or anything that's kind of 8-note based. So the first thing that we're going to need is a metronome. And what I advise is a lovely digital metronome that's called Soundbrenner. It's completely free on Apple and iOS. You can use any other metronomes, but I've used this one for years just because it's really easy to use and it doesn't cost any money. So once you've downloaded Soundbrenner, we essentially need to set it up for this piece. This piece is in 3/4. So where our time signature is, we have a little button there that says 4/4. We're just going to go ahead and change that to 3/4, and then we're in the correct signature for this piece. And also what you'll see is that the very front of it, we have basically a picture of a quarter note. Now, most of our song here is in 8th notes, so I just want you to tap on that, and we're going to change it and just scroll so we have 8th notes. So we should have a time signature of 3/4 and a picture of 2 8th notes put together. So that's essentially our metronome setup. Now, I've got it on 140 BPM at the moment. That's how fast that is. And essentially, that just means when I'm playing my arpeggio, everything I'm playing is on the click. But again, that's the end tempo that's very fast. So we're going to use our metronome to help us slow this down. So I always recommend starting with 50%. So that would be 70 BPM. Woo maths. There we go. So this is actually the hardest bit, is finding the correct tempo for you, because if 70 hurts too much, then take it up to 80. If 70 is too fast, take it down to 60. It really isn't like an ego game of how fast you can play. You just need to find the right tempo so you can sit there and play this kind of play along with a click without dying. That's it. So for example, I've set mine to 70 BPM, and then if I hit play, should sound like that. And that just means 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So if I set that down, that means if I have my F chord, for example, I'll be playing my C, E, G, A, G, E, and then actually I can just stop. C, E, G, A, G, E, stop. I just want to play it once and just make sure it's there. Again, If that's too fast, slow it down by 10. So take it down to 60 BPM, for example, and then I would hit play. 1 and 2 and 3 and done. Have a little break, do it again. 1 and 2 and 3 and done. That's all we need. Now, if you're having trouble about getting in time with the metronome, what I really recommend before weirdly even playing the ukulele is putting the metronome on and just start counting along in time. Don't touch anything on the ukulele, just sit here and count along. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. And I know it's horrible, but try counting aloud. It's good for your ears. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So we found our tempo that we start with, and essentially we can play one bar along with a metronome. So I recommend essentially playing that bar once, stopping, do it again, stop, do it again. Essentially do that 3 or 4 times, and it just helps us soak it into muscle memory. So if you can get to 3 or 4 and essentially you're really happy with that, then you add 10 BPM. Okay, so that'll take us to 70 BPM, for example. So then I'll try that. I'll put my 70 BPM, count myself in. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and stop. Count yourself in again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and stop. And the thing is, we keep on doing this. So you kind of get 3 or 4 good playthroughs at that tempo, and then you push 10 BPM more. Only 10 BPM at a time. It's a nice, comfortable place where kind of it's a little bit of a push, but essentially we can still very much, it's an achievable goal, basically. So let's say, for example, at the end of the practice session, you get to 90 BPM and you're not very happy at 90 BPM. It's not clean and you can't quite get it. This is the cool thing, okay? Because essentially that means the next practice session you have, you don't start where you started. Say we started at 60, you don't have to go back to 60 now. You've already put in that work into your muscle memory. So by doing that work and then having a little rest, and then I always suggest playing daily, but you play whenever you can essentially, but little and often is always best. So essentially then, say I died at 90 BPM and I couldn't beat that, the next time I would start just before my death, which is 80 BPM, and that's where I'd kick off instead. And the theory is that we kind of normalize 80 BPM. So actually 90 BPM only becomes the next jump up. So it's not as scary as going from 60 to 90. And also, like I said, you've done 60 once, you've completed it, you don't have to go back to it, okay? And essentially, we keep on pushing through every practice. So that means that then maybe your next practice session, maybe you get to 100 BPM and you die. So that means that your next practice session, you start at 90 BPM. All it does is basically means is that we can kind of check mark our practice, okay? And this is more purposeful practice. This isn't, if you want to really get fast and kind of do it scientifically and everything like that, and you're not just playing for fun. Because we have to still play for fun and enjoying the instrument. But like I said, when it comes to the crunch time and you want to get faster, this system really works. So just try it for me, spend some time with the metronome. If you hate metronomes, you don't have to do it. But like I said, it's essentially, it shows us and kind of keeps a tally of where we got to on our last practice session so we can then push it. Otherwise, if we don't, our brains aren't very good at knowing what BPMs are, especially not just straight to the number. So like I said, we don't know how fast we played it last time or anything like that. This helps us keep a log and therefore reach our goal faster. And there we go. That is another Fingerstyle first day ticked off. Well done. That means we only have 3 left. That's very scary to me. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed piece number 6. As always, the speed might be the killer at the moment. So just always, basically, don't worry about speed. I constantly say this a lot as a teacher. You don't have to fret about speed. Kind of learn things slowly, and then you can build up the speed when you're ready. You'll always be able to build up the speed, so just take things slowly. We're after smooth, nice, calm precision. That's what it's all about. Today I was performing on the Flight Navigator tenor. I actually haven't got around to reviewing this one yet on YouTube. I've reviewed the baritone version, which I liked very much, and so basically I've been spending some time with the tenor version, who shockingly I also quite like. But if you do want to see a full review on the Navigator tenor and some other flight ukuleles, then make sure you're subscribed, please. Right, I'll see you in 2 whole weeks for piece number 7. If you found this video helpful, please drop it a like because it helps me and the YouTube gods and whatever they do. But either way, keep practicing the ukulele. Have a beautiful couple of weeks. See you very soon.